Hello everyone, this is Nitpicking Nerd, and this is my review of episode 7 of season 3 of Star Trek Picard called Dominion. And it was a pretty good episode. I was pleasantly surprised that they finally start to reveal some of the mysteries they've been setting up. I was worried they're going to keep dragging us on with the mysteries until the very last episode, or maybe not even answer all of them at all. And I made many theory videos speculating about what the surprises might be, so I kind of didn't expect any of them to come true, but I guess it was kind of obvious when you think about it from the start, especially since the episode's name is Dominion, and obviously they've been doing like a sequel to Deep Space Nine all along in this season, so it's no surprise that the big villain is revealed to be Gul Dukat, or more precisely, it's the Pares, since he's speaking for them, that's why he was always saying we want this, we want that, because he's not just Gul Dukat, he's basically one of the Pares who are still stuck in the fire caves, and they want the changelings to help free them basically, so they can take over the galaxy. They've made kind of a deal with the changelings that they will leave the changelings unharmed and only wipe out all the solids, all the humanoids, and I guess take some of them over so they can rule the galaxy, and they promise to leave the changelings alone. And Jack is the key to all of this because he's basically the perfect host for the Coast Amogen, the main Paraith, because his biochemistry is so suitable. They didn't specifically address Sub Rosa, but they did mention something about some anaphasic energy in his body and all of that, so obviously they're tying it to Sub Rosa without specifically mentioning it. But that basically makes him the perfect host for the Paraith, and so the main Paraith, who's kind of half Gul Dukat, half Costa Mojan, wants to take him over. They do mention that the anaphasic energy is non-linear or something like that, so that can explain why he has these psychic powers. Maybe it's also tied to the Traveler powers that Wesley had, maybe Wesley also had the same kind of anaphasic energy in him as well, so that can tie up loose ends from TNG. And so the crew of the Titan basically trying to hide Jack somewhere in the galaxy so the bad guys cannot find them since he's key to their plan, and so they go to some random junkyard to hide the ship there. And Jack keeps having those visions and he sees the red door all the time, which I'm starting to think that symbolizes the wormhole probably, and the voice he keeps hearing is distorted, but I'm starting to suspect that might be Avery Brooks returning as Cisco. Maybe we'll finally get Cisco at least in a vision, and that the prophets will somehow empower Jack to defeat the Pares. And the simple solution would be to simply take the ship to Bajor and to fire a beam of chroniton particles down to the fire caves, which should disrupt or destroy the Pares forever, since it was set up in Deep Space Nine that chroniton radiation will destroy them, and so that's a simple solution, and that's what I would do. Hopefully the show didn't forget about it. And meanwhile, we see the changelings are working on Picard's body, trying to reanimate it basically, and it actually gave me goosebumps when we saw the Borg implant starting to pop up from his skin. So they are actually activating his Borg nanites and basically turning him into Locutus again. So I'm guessing in the very last episode we'll see the entire Borg armada to arrive after they use Locutus to summon them. So I'm guessing maybe it's all a distraction, maybe they just want to wipe out most of Starfleet so that no one will notice when they escape the fire caves, and as I mentioned, Starfleet ships are able to create chroniton beams which might destroy the non-corporeal, non-linear entities, and so maybe that's why they want to make sure there is a big distraction with the Borg and fighting the new Locutus, and so no one will notice that they're trying to reopen the fire caves and release the Pares. And in Deep Space Nine they did mention there's going to be a final reckoning between the Pares and Prophets, which never ended up happening because all of that stuff was delayed because of the chroniton radiation that Deep Space Nine flooded the station with. And so the final battle between the Prophets and the Pares was delayed and never actually happened. And so maybe we're finally going to see that in the show. We did see that Picard was studying some Bajoran artifacts even in the previous season, so it will tie nicely to that. And it will be kind of cool to see the Gul Dukat again. I was never a big fan of that whole plot line in season 7 of Deep Space Nine when they basically turn him into a cartoony one-dimensional villain, but if they bring him back and do something epic and awesome with him, maybe it will make all of that stuff kind of worth it. So maybe it will retroactively make Deep Space Nine even better. And so in the scene when that floating face reveals itself as Gul Dukat, that gave me genuine goosebumps. Almost as much as seeing the dead body of Picard reanimated as Locutus again. And it was sad to hear that Martok got killed by Toral, the son of Duras, who now rules the Empire. That was kind of bad news. And so because of all of this, they cannot go to the Klingons for help. So I'm betting in the next episode they will go to the Romulans to ask for their help. And that's probably where we're going to see Scylla, who will become their ally in the end, and she will help them in the final battle against the Borg. And who knows, maybe Worf will travel to the Klingon homeworld and kill Toral and take over the Empire himself, and then show up with a fleet of Klingon ships as well. And then we'll have a really huge space battle with everyone showing up. Maybe Garak will show up with some Cardassian ships, and so everyone will band together to save the galaxy. And in the very end of the season, Geordi LaForge will unveil his repaired Enterprise D, and they'll all go to the bridge of that ship for one final trip around the block. And Picard will sit in the captain's chair and say something like second star to the left, and then straight on till morning. And then we'll see the Enterprise D flying into the sunset in space, and that will be a perfect ending. So that's all for now. Let me know what you think about all of this, and we'll talk again in my next review, which will be more detailed and more nitpicky. So that's all for now, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.